Hi, I'm Mr. New Jersey. Being a coastal state, New Jersey has a plethora of lighthouses, and they are the subject of today's video. I made my first foray into the New Jersey lighthouse scene at the Sandy Hook Lighthouse, located on Monmouth County's Sandy Hook Peninsula, which forms the northern tip of the Jersey Shore. Thus, the Sandy Hook Lighthouse will be my primary reference point throughout this video. First, we'll discuss why lighthouses are built. Then we'll cover how they work. After that, I'll talk briefly about the Sandy Hook Lighthouse's Revolutionary War history. And finally, we'll talk about what the experience is like for a tourist visiting a New Jersey lighthouse. So, firstly, why do lighthouses exist? Lighthouses are meant to let sailors know where they are. They are typically built in the form of a tower, with a light source at the top, which is lit at night when it is otherwise difficult for sailors to see their surroundings. Some lighthouses are meant to warn sailors away from shallow or dangerous areas, while other lighthouses are meant to help sailors navigate towards a place, such as a harbor. The Sandy Hook Lighthouse, for instance, was built in the 1760s in response to a number of shipwrecks that had occurred on the sandbars surrounding the Sandy Hook Peninsula as the ships were attempting to navigate through New York Bay. Basically, a whole bunch of merchants from colonial New York got together and lobbied their government to build a lighthouse on the Sandy Hook Peninsula. Thus, New York's colonial government purchased land on the Sandy Hook Peninsula and financed the construction of a lighthouse there, meaning that New Jersey's first lighthouse was a project undertaken by the New York government rather than the New Jersey government. Though shortly after the United States gained independence from the British Empire, the federal government acquired all existing lighthouses from the states, putting them under federal control. Because lighthouses are meant to mark different locations, it is important that they not all look alike. There are several methods for differentiating between lighthouses in a given area. Sometimes they are painted in different colors, but the downside of this method is that the different colors can only be effectively seen during the daytime. Another method is to give nearby lighthouses different numbers of towers. For instance, the Sandy Hook Lighthouse has only one tower, while the nearby Navesink Lighthouse has two, nicknamed the Twin Lights. Yet the downside of this method is that building multiple towers increases cost. Thankfully, modern technology allows much more cost-effective ways to distinguish between lighthouses. For example, rather than emit light continuously, many lighthouses will emit bursts of light at set intervals. The frequency of the bursts lets sailors know which lighthouse they are looking at. Now we'll talk about the light sources themselves. Ancient lighthouses were typically just fire pits built in high-up areas or on platforms, but technology has advanced a lot since then. The Sandy Hook Lighthouse is a good example of the progression of lighthouse technology, since it is the state's oldest lighthouse and the oldest continuously operating lighthouse in the country. It began operating in the 1760s, and it originally used whale oil lamps as its light source. However, like most lighthouses, it has since been updated to use electric light. Back in the old days of fires and oil lamps, and even in the early electric years, lighthouses typically had a lighthouse keeper who lived at the lighthouse in order to maintain it and set the light to run and stop when necessary. For instance, in the days of whale oil, the Sandy Hook lighthouse keeper had to lug the oil up the lighthouse's narrow and winding stairs. In modern times, however, most lighthouses, including Sandy Hook's, use automated electric light sources, meaning the occupation of lighthouse keeper has pretty much ceased to exist. However, maintenance still has to be done, and for U.S. lighthouses, it is periodically performed by the U.S. Coast Guard. Beyond their basic navigational functions, lighthouses often have interesting histories. For instance, during the Revolutionary War, both New York City and the Sandy Hook Peninsula were occupied by the British. The British used the Sandy Hook Lighthouse just as the Americans had, to guide their ships safely through New York Bay. In order to make it harder for the British to successfully navigate the bay, American forces actually attacked the lighthouse with artillery to try to destroy it. Alas, they were unable to do so before the British soldiers defending it succeeded in driving them back. At the time, I'm sure the Americans were disappointed that they couldn't destroy the lighthouse, but I bet they were glad they had failed after the war ended, since they could go back to using it themselves. Now we'll move on to the most important question of this video. What is there for you, the tourist, to see when you visit a lighthouse? First of all, you'll probably be on a guided tour, with a tour guide who will tell you about the lighthouse's history and function. Then you'll have to climb a lot of stairs, which will likely be windy and narrow. You may also have to climb a ladder once you reach the top of the stairs. Despite all the climbing, there's a big payoff at the end, when you emerge at the top of the lighthouse and take in great views of the surrounding area. Beyond the tour, there's a good chance the lighthouse will have some small exhibits about its history or about lighthouses in general. The Sandy Hook Lighthouse has such exhibits in the building next to the tower. There are 11 lighthouses in New Jersey that tourists can visit, some of which are still in operation and others of which have been shut down. Most of the state's lighthouses are on the Atlantic coast, but there are a few on the Delaware Bay and the southern Delaware River. Some lighthouses are free to visit, while others have fees, since this information, as well as the tour times themselves, differ from house to house. I don't want to get into that sort of thing here. I do, however, want to tell you about the annual Lighthouse Challenge. It takes place on a particular weekend each October, during which, after paying a small registration fee, participants seek to visit every tourist-open lighthouse in the state, as well as some Coast Guard life-saving stations. Those who do so successfully within the time limit have their names entered in a drawing to win a prize. I hope you found this video useful and informative. If you did, please like and subscribe. Have a nice day, and I'll see you next time.